It seems to me that the artist's struggle for his integrity is a kind of metaphor. Must be considered as a metaphor for the struggle which is universal and daily of all human beings on the face of this terrifying globe to get to become human beings. It is not your fault, it is not my fault that I write. For you in the position of a complainant for doing something that I must do. What we might get at this evening, if we are lucky, if the mic doesn't fail, my voice holds out, if you ask me questions, is what the importance of this effort is. It would seem to me, I want to suggest two propositions. The first one is that the poets, by which I mean all artists, are finally the only people who know the truth about us. Soldiers don't, statesmen don't, priests don't, union leaders don't. Only the poets. That's my first proposition. The second proposition is what I really want to get at tonight. And it sounds mystical, I think, in a country like ours and at a time like this. But something awful is happening to a civilization when it ceases to produce poets, and what is even more crucial, when it ceases anywhere whatever to believe in the report only poets can make. People, millions of people, whom you will never see, who don't know you, never will know you, people who may try to kill you in the morning, live in a darkness which, if you have that funny, terrible thing which every artist can recognize and no artist can define, you are responsible to those people to lighten that darkness, and it does not matter what happens to you. You are being used in the way a crab is useful, the way sand certainly has some function. It is impersonal. This force which you didn't ask for, and this destiny which you must accept, is also your responsibility. And if you survive it, if you don't cheat, if you don't lie, it is not only, your glory, your achievement. It is almost our only hope. Because only an artist can tell, and only artists have told, since we have heard of man, what it is like for anyone who gets to this planet to survive it. What it's like to die, or to have somebody die. What it's like to fear death. What it's like to fear. What it's like to love. What it's like to be glad. Hymns don't do this. Churches really cannot do it. The trouble is, that although the artist can do it, the price that he has to pay himself and that you, the audience, must also pay is the willingness to give up everything to realize that although you spent 27 years acquiring this house, this furniture, this position, although you spent 40 years raising this child and children, nothing, none of it belongs to you.
Dedication. vocabulary to others. You don't need to have a philosophical bent to grasp it. There are three little words. But we want to let the world know that these words describe what we mean and what we are determined to do about racial injustice. One is the word all. We don't want some of our rights. We don't want a few token handouts here and there. We want all of our rights. The other word is here. There are some people who say that we need to go back to Africa. And then there are some others who tell Negroes in the South to leave the South. You can't be free, so get out. But down in Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and South Carolina, we are saying something else now. We want all of our rights, and we want all of our rights here in Alabama and Mississippi and South Carolina. Then there's a third word. It is the word now. We are not willing to wait 100 years for our rights. We are not willing to wait 50 years for what is ours on the basis of the Constitution of this United States and the authority of God Himself. No, we are not willing to wait another 25 years for our rights. We can hear voices telling us to slow up. We can hear voices telling us to cool off. Our only answer in calm, patient terms must be that we have cooled off too long, and if we keep cooling off, we'll end up in a deep freeze. We must go on and say, no, what we are saying to this nation is that we want all of our rights. We want them here, and we want all of them not next year, not next week, but we want them now, at this hour. This is what you're saying.
African American Art and Culture Complex's MLK Day of Service 2021. Given the adversity we have all experienced over the past year, we chose Strength to Love as our theme for MLK Day of Service 2021. The theme, named after the 1963 book by Dr. King, is a collection of Reverend King's sermons that highlighted the racial segregation in the United States with a heavy emphasis on permanent religious values. King's writing reflects his deep understanding of the need of agape, a love that is concerned with going the extra mile to ensure the well-being of others. This past year, we have dealt with the COVID-19 global pandemic, the loss of loved ones, mental health challenges from feelings of angst and isolation from family and friends, and a resurgence of white supremacy with an emphasis on anti-Blackness. Suppose we can reframe how we view our current challenges and encourage our communities to advocate for radical healing spaces. In that case, we can transform the way we work to recenter humanity through actions of love. The next 3 days are about love in action, understanding that everything we do matters. The way we honor and appreciate our history, the music that provides self-care to our souls, the way we steward our earth and nourish our bodies, the way we inspire others through our words, and the way we pay tribute to the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Over the next 3 days, we invite you to participate with us during this incredible program and encourage you to access the list of noteworthy resources that we have pulled for you. In the words of Dr. King, returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. We are grateful for the vision of our brilliant directors, our creative AAACC team, and for our loving partners, community members, family, and friends. Let us all continue to pursue the strength to love and improve our communities. Enjoy the program and be blessed.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun, a brand new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Hello, my name is Cassie Cook. I'm originally from Bessemer, Alabama, a suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. I will be sharing with you today my experience during the Civil Rights era. As I recall, it was one day about 12:30. I was at school. I was attending Jackson S. Abrams High School. And we had got the word that the Civil Rights March was coming down 9th Avenue. They were en route to the 16th Street Baptist Church. I was very intrigued when I heard that the march was coming. Of course, I had seen Dr. Martin Luther King on the TV, heard him speak. I had seen the struggles in Mississippi, and I was not too impressed with what I saw. And I said to myself, if I get the opportunity to help make things a little different, I was going to take it. So this day, When I heard they were coming, and they was almost across the bridge, we had students running to the door, and our principal, Reverend Branch, was standing at the school door. One half was locked, and he was standing in the other side of the door. And he said to me, "Cassie Cook, you don't want to go out that door. Your mother is not going to appreciate that." And I listened at his word. And what I did, he straddled his legs like a V. And I ran straight through his legs, took a right, and I ran straight down to the superhighway. And at that time, the people was coming off of the bridge. And I says, "Oh my God, I am going to do this." And along with several other students from the school, we joined the march. We began our journey to the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, where Dr. Martin Luther King was going to teach us the art in nonviolent marching. I was very impressed with that. And I was really like, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait until Dr. King came on the stage. I wanted to hear his voice in person. And when he walked on the street in the 16th Baptist Church sanctuary, he greeted us. And then he went into his method of teaching. The art in nonviolence marching. How to behave. How to try to stay out the dog's way. How to mind the authorities. And his voice was so electrifying. It went like deep in my soul. I could feel it. And looked like what he was saying, pieces was falling off in my body. And then I could feel it penetrating through my back. But I know I had gotten everything that he said. I have a photogenic memory. I've had that since I was a young child. I had it. I got it. Because of my commitment that I had for my grandfather, it was like, I'm going to do this. This is going to make a difference. Because at that time, they was desegregating the Woodworth lunch counters. And my grandfather always drove people around to the hospital, and they would have to stay a long time, and they would come back to Woodworth. They would buy their coffee, then they had to come outside, and then they sit down on the concrete, and it would be about 7 to 8 old black men with their back against the brick wall, and they were sitting there with their coffee. And they all was talking and smiling. And they was waiting until their turn to go back. And my grandfather would always say to me, his name's Eugene Vance Sr. I love him. He was a very humble man. And I would be walking down the street sometime. He said, "Hey, babe." I said, "Hi, Daddy." And he would say, "You be good," because I would be going shopping to one of the other little stores. "You be good." I said, "Okay, Daddy." And he would say, "Don't take any wood nickels." And that energized me, and I was ready to go. And as I went, I says, I am not going to take any wood nickels. So as I participated in the march, my grandfather's voice resonated in my soul. don't take no wooden nickels, and how I had been trained by my grandmother and by my mother, and how they really tried to shelter us, but they could not shelter us from the things that was on TV, because we always looked at the evening news. And this is how I said, I want to be with Martin and that group, because I want to help make a difference. Now at that time, I had a great uncle. He owned a restaurant about 2.5 blocks from the 16th Street Baptist Church. And so he was training me, and I was like really impressed with business. And he was training me to be the restaurant like assistant manager. And so on this Sunday morning, he drove me to the cafe. And we always had a staff that was back in the kitchen, that was cooking, that was getting ready for the people when they left church. They would come there, they would eat dinner. And it was a nice little black business. It was a wonderful black business. And I was just so impressed that morning, because he gave me my bankroll and he watched me put the money in the cash register. And I go, oh, I'm a big girl now. I can do this. And I was like, oh, I am running the store today. So I was just really impressed. And he told me that he would see me later. He was a little politician in a little small suburb. And he said, I will see you later. And I was very impressed how he dressed, with his tie and his suit and his pretty black skin, always oiled up. And he was respected in the community because he brought something to the community. He brought something to the people that was surrounded in Birmingham with Jim Crow. The cafe was surrounded with all these different restaurants and little coffee shops that black people could not go to. So he provided a place for them. So they respected him greatly. And so I goes, well, I'm making a difference here too. That day, on April 15, 1963, after my uncle left the restaurant, I was just proud, walking around, making sure everything was going to be great when the people came from church. Everything was really quiet in the restaurant. No cars was moving around on the street because it was early. It was about 9:30 in the morning, and the little ladies in the kitchen, they had came very early. So all the pots was on the stove, and they was doing what they do. And I had greeted them and very respectfully, and they said good morning. They were very kind ladies. And so I left them in the kitchen. I went back to the dining room. And I must have been there for about 10 minutes after my great uncle left. Walter Jenkins was a great man. He provided things to the community. I appreciated him for that. So after about 10 minutes after he left, everything was just still and quiet. And I was walking around looking at the tables, and it was just quiet. The building shook. The whole building shook. The old ladies in the kitchen, they yelled, all three of them, oh my God, they bombed the church. And I said, that can't be. I said, that can't be. It cannot be. And so then I went to the kitchen door. I said, don't leave. I'll be right back. Just stay in here. Don't leave. I'm going to run around to the church. As fast as I could run, 1 block. The church was up 2.5 blocks from the cafe. But as fast as I could run 1 block at the age 16. When I got 1 block away, the area was already sealed off. And it was very evident to me at that time, at my tender age, that I knew with the authorities walking around in their uniforms and undercover people, that they knew that someone had already put a bomb in that church. And as I stood there behind the tape that the authorities said to us, do not come on this side of the tape. And we stood there, and it was very quiet. We had no emotions. The people behind the tape had no emotions. We were not talking. We was just looking directly at the church because we knew that Sunday school had to be going on. We knew that the elders would be coming in shortly. We knew that it was probably some elders in the church because it would be kids in there for Sunday school. So we just stood there. We looked. But we could see the people at the church. We could see the men walking. We could see the tears rolling down. And this was a long distance. But you got their emotions. We could look, we could see, we could feel. And so I stood there for about 20 or 30 minutes. And we just saw the white authorities walking up and down on the inside of the tape. And I was so disappointed. I was so hurt because I had to relive the first time I went in that church. I had to relive what I had been taught about obedience and nonviolence. I had to relive that during the moment. And it was not a good feeling because I did not know. Honestly, I had seen and heard about 3 church bombings in our area, but not in our immediate area, out in the suburbs. At Dr. Shuttleworth's house, I had seen that in the paper. But oh my God, I'm standing here. I'm looking at this church. I'm looking at the runs. And I just could not believe what I was seeing. I could not believe that people were so evil. I could not believe that. A lot of people didn't have it like I had it. It was always sheltered. We didn't know how evil the white man was. Mm-hmm. We really didn't know because they kept us behind. Mm-hmm. And so I gently turned around and I walked very slowly back to the cafe. And I unlocked the door and I went in and I went to the kitchen. And the old ladies, you could tell on their face, it was fear. You can tell that they was carrying a lot of weight on their shoulders. Because under their wings stood a lot of us. But it weighed their shoulders down, and I could tell. And I was very obedient. And I says, yes, you were right. You were right. They bombed the church. They bombed 16th Street Baptist Church. I said, but I do not know how many people was injured. But the building is torn down in the front. I do not know. But what I do know, that someone is injured inside of the church. I know that. I said, but what we have to do We have to stay here. We have to do our job. And we're going to wait till my uncle come back. I said, we will find out. I'm sure we will find out on the news. And they turned on a little radio. But I was up in the front and they was gathering news. And I went on to complete what I was doing. And my uncle came back about 3 o'clock because everything was so jammed and people was moving, and then they were beginning to take the people out that had been injured. And when he got back, he had this deep concern on his face. He says, you know. I says, yes, I know. I ran over there, but all I could see was the ruins of the church. He said, okay, baby. He says, I'm going to talk to you going home. And he says, we got to pray for our people because we're better than this. He said, but there's going to be a change coming one day. He said, I know you're going to get the extent of this on the news this evening, but do not let it affect you. Do not forget what Martin have taught you. Make sure you apply that in your daily life. Make sure you keep your civil rights interests up. Young people like you, that's going to help us make a difference. And I took that at heart. And I kept my grandfather's picture and what he said to me, don't take no wood nickels. And so from that, I was able to center myself, and I was able to say, I am in civil rights for the rest of my life. What happened in our nation capital last Wednesday was very disheartening to me. As I looked at the protesters, as I looked at the message that they were given, and when they got to the Capitol, how I looked, how the police let them intrude upon the People's House, I think that the entire group of policemen and all of the protectors that the House should have had was part of that whole protest movement. That is my personal opinion. People that are making decisions and changes for our people and our communities at large, the advice that I could give them is to impart all of the knowledge that you can, that you have. Encourage them the art in going to school, to be educated, to become part of this tech world, because it's more than talking on a telephone. It's how do you make the phone? How do you reach the higher technology, which is where the world is going now? And we can only do that if we educate our people that knowledge is power. Dr. Martin Luther King was a dreamer. And it is my take that it is nothing wrong with a dreamer, because dreams do come true. For instance, we had President Barack Obama for 8 years. He was the dream. I know Dr. King is very happy that we was blessed with our first black president. I feel that the NAACP, from its humble beginning, was used by the black community. And I also know that they are utilized by the Black community now. However, our people need to be educated that the NAACP is the National Association for Colored People. And most of them think it's for Black people only. But the NAACP is for people of all color. And we must recognize and realize that some people in our community do not realize what that acronym really means. Right now, my commitment to the civil rights organization, the NAACP, is really embedded in my heart that if we stay together and we get a positive message out to the community to make the community stronger, to pull Black people together, to educate them, if we do this, we can become a healthier community. But we got to reach them. I think we've had a difficult time getting them to be part of an organization that can really help them grow, give them information, keep them out of the prison system, let them know that there is a better way. And this is a commitment of mine that I would like to help the NAACP impart to the greater community.
Hi, I'm Sam Pollard, director of MLK FBI. It's the story of Dr. King, who was a civil rights icon in the 50s and 60s, who in the 60s was being surveilled by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, who thought he was one of the most dangerous men in America. They tried to connect him to communism. They used his multiple affairs to try to discredit him and destroy his reputation. It's a very important film. It's got social and political relevance today in today's political and social climate. And it was a labor of love for myself and the producer, Ben Hadeen. So hopefully you will find this film as engaging, as important as we both think it is. Again, MLK, FBI, I'm Director Sam Pollard, and thank you.
My name is Jamil Nasim. I'm the program's coordinator at the African American Arts and Culture Complex based out of the Fillmore District in San Francisco. I'm here with director, producer Sam Pollard to discuss his incredible new film, MLK FBI. How you feeling today, Sam?
I'm not bad. I feel not bad today. It hasn't been as busy as it's been most of the week. So I'm glad that the film is premiered today, and I'm hoping people go out and stream it or have virtual screenings or go to their nearby theater if it's open. And if the film is playing in the nearby theater, go and check it out.
Definitely. So starting off, could you talk about your journey into filmmaking and your relationship with the medium? Like, have films always been a big part of your life?
Well, you know, when I think back on it, Jamil, it always was. I mean, as a young man, when I was in my, from 11 to 16, I just loved watching old television movies on television. I would watch them over and over again. We used to have a show in New York called The $1 Million Movie. And you could watch one movie 5 days a week, all day, every week. It was a $1 Million Movie, had the RKO Film Studio vault. So I got to see King Kong many, many times. I got to see Citizen Kane many, many times. I got to see Gunga Din many, many times. So I really whetted my appetite for movies. So in the early 20s, when I was sort of introduced to this film and television workshop at the public television station in New York, which had been started in 1968 after Dr. King's assassination, to get more people of color behind the scenes, shooting, editing, doing sound, producing. It seemed like the perfect fit for me. I didn't know it at the time. I was sort of reluctant, but I got to this workshop. And after 1 year being in this workshop, I was really enamored with the idea I wanted to be an editor. I didn't know how I would be an editor, but I wanted to be an editor.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate to get my first job on a low budget film that's become sort of an independent classic called Ganja and Hess, directed by Bill Gunn.
I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, and the editor was a gentleman named Victor Konevsky, and he took me under his wing. And after that job, I became his assistant. I was the apprentice on the film. And after that job, he had me I became his assistant. And I was his assistant editor for 3 years. And he basically introduced me to the world of documentaries and showing me how you make a documentary, how you make selects, how you edit it. And that was the beginning of that long journey for me.
That's beautiful.
Back then we're editing film, actual film, 16 millimeter film. On these machines where you would run, it's called the steam back, you would have the film go from left to right. And then you would cut it, you would splice it with splicers and tape it together with splicing tape. It seems primitive now, but back then it was the way we made films.
Yo, what was your experience like on Ganja and Hess?
Oh man, it was like, I felt like I had entered a world I didn't know anything about. Here I was, they were shooting in upstate New York. And most of the crew was black, and Bill Gunn, would come in and look at dailies with Victor, the editor. And I had no idea what this film was about, man. I thought it was a vampire film, but it was much more than that. And I would go up to the editing room, which was near the location every day. I never talked much. My responsibilities were to sweep the edit room, put together the film trims, rewind. And then when lunchtime would come, I would sit by myself with the rest of the crew, isolated, eat an apple or an orange because I didn't eat a lot because I was so spoiled by my mother's food. And I weighed like 170 pounds back then.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and I was just startled, man, watching these actors act, watching these scenes unfold. It was like, this is how you make movies? It was mind-boggling, man. And then watching it come together in the edit room, it was absolutely mind-boggling.
Do you have any interesting Bill Gunn stories?
Well, he was, I thought he was like a strange dude, man. I thought he was a strange guy. He seemed what I call in those days arty, arty type. He was an interesting man. I don't think I said much to him until I got, I interacted with him later in my career. But back then, I didn't talk much. I just observed, man. I was observing him, observing the DP, a gentleman named Jim Hinton, observing all the people on the crew, which was majority black. It was really a black crew, except for the editing room. Except for me, I was the only black person in the editing room.
Yeah.
So it was wild, man. It was a very unusual experience. And when the film finished, and Victor finished editing the film, I remember watching it on the big screen. I'll be honest with you, Jamil, I didn't know what to make of it.
Definitely.
I didn't know what to make of it. I didn't know if it was good or bad, but I knew it was different. It was definitely different.
The story of MLK FBI is a somewhat unknown story in our community, but the approach you took illustrates the story in a new light, and it almost feels like a character study of historical figures in a sense. Like,
I like that, man. I like that character study. Now you're gonna get me on your side, man. I like that.
What initially drew you to the story?
Well, it was I shouldn't be chewing this. It was a book written by a historian named Dave Garrow, and he had written a book about MLK and the FBI. And my producer on this film, Benedine, had read the book, and he said, "Man, I think this could be a great film." And we had already worked together on another film called Two Trains Running. So I read the book also, and I agreed with Ben. I said, "Wow, this is a book to definitely turn into a film." And coincidentally, I knew David Garrow because he had been a consultant on Eyes on the Prize too, when I was a producer. So we reached out to David. We took an option on the book. We flew to Pittsburgh, where he's from. We brought a camera crew with us. We sat down with him for about 4 hours and basically had him really give us all the aspects of the book and what the book was about and what was the genesis of the book and who was king and who was in his relationship with Hoover and the FBI. And after that interview that we had, that 4 hours, we knew we had the basis of a film. So we then put together a proposal, put together a sizzle reel, created a sizzle reel, and went out, started beating the bushes, trying to raise money. And we got a lot of no's at first. And then finally, in the beginning of 2019, two companies came to the table, Field of Vision and a company called Play Action. They helped fund the film, which enabled us to then shoot the rest of our interviews in the fall of 2019. And then we brought in archival producers. We brought in our editor, a woman named Laura Tomaselli. And we started editing late November, started screening dailies, footage, archival footage in late November, and then really wrapped up by the beginning of 2020. But then the COVID hit. And so our editor ended up moving upstate to her house. And we started editing remotely, working remotely. She would do cuts, she would send it to us. We would send her notes, she would send us notes, cuts, new cuts, she would send us notes, she would then do new cuts. And we kept working like that until we had to submit it to Toronto, which was in late July. So it was, that was, and quite honestly, you know, Jamil, usually when you're doing an independent doc, it could take 5-6 years to do. I mean, the film I had done before with Ben Hadeen, Two Trains Running, took like 5.5 years. This one was relatively fast. It only took 2.5 years to get done.
Yeah, that is really fast for documentary production.
Very fast, very fast.
You just spoke a little bit on this. I know you spoke about it in other interviews, how you had difficulty securing funding to a certain degree, which is an abnormal thing in the film industry. But do you think some of that apprehension from potential funders came from the subject matter, and whether it was like government surveillance or King's extramarital affairs?
You know, initially I just thought they all seemed to like our sizzle reel, the places we went to. They just didn't think it seemed to be the right time to fund it. So I didn't think they had any issues with the information in the reel. They just seemed to think that it wasn't the right time. Now, I would like to crow a little and say, see what you missed out on, but that doesn't matter. I mean, IFC has been a fabulous distributor coming on board this film in the fall. And I'm very, very pleased, as Ben is, that IFC is supporting this film to the nth degree.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Following that line of thought, what would your could you speak about your experience in the industry as a Black filmmaker, and what advice you may give to young Black and brown filmmakers trying to get into the industry or make their first film?
That's a great question, man. Great question. So here, think of it. I've worked on a film. The first film that I worked on was primarily a Black crew. The editor, though, was Jewish. The assistant editor was a young white woman from the South. And then I go on and I'm working as Victor Koneski's assistant from 72 to 75. And most of the films we work on were films about white subjects. And I rarely would see another Black person. Every once in a while, we were working over a place on 45th Street and 9th Avenue, the Film Center building. Every once in a while, I'd see this big, tall Black guy walk by, you know, had on these long coats and had this big bangle on his wrist, had a big shoulder bag. And I remember asking him, I said, who's that guy? So his name was St. Clair Bourne. He was a African-American documentary filmmaker. So I didn't really see many other Black filmmakers, and I didn't really see any Black editors. I had heard that there had been some Black editors, but I didn't see any. So at that time in my life, Jamil, I was of the mindset that I didn't want to be, you know, if you ask me if I would I would say, I just want to be an editor. I don't want to edit Black films. I don't want to work on Black films. I want to just edit films. And that was my mindset. But then when I turned 25, 26, I started editing. I edited a little film about the people in the New Orleans who dress up, you know, Black people dress up for Mardi Gras, Black Indians in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. I edited a little half-hour film. And then I met a Black editor. I was going around looking for work with my little resume with my 2 or 3 films on them. And I met this Black editor named George Bowers, who had come up in the industry and had been tutored by a gentleman named Hugh Robertson, who had been also an African-American editor who had edited Midnight Cowboy. And went on to direct. He had directed a film with Calvin Lockhart called Melinda. I don't know if you remember Melinda.
I did not know Midnight Cowboy was directed by or edited by a Black person.
Yeah, Hugh Robertson. So I met this gentleman, George Bowers. He was editing a feature film. He had been on to edit feature films. And he was editing this feature film called Countdown at Casino, directed by Ossie Davis, with Greg Morris and Mission Impossible and Ruby Dee. And he took a liking to me. And I ended up assisting with him on a couple of documentaries. And then he moved out to California and he decided he wanted to direct. And he was directing a low budget feature film, a remake of the classic 1947 John Garfield film, Body and Soul. But this one was going to have all black cast: Leon Isaac Kennedy from Penitentiary, his wife Jane Kennedy, and George asked me if I was interested in editing. I had done some editing for some little shorts he had done in New York. So I said, yes, I went out to California. And as I was finishing that film, he said, you know, my buddy who I've worked with is looking for an editor to cut this documentary about Chicago blues musicians. And it turned out to be that guy who I used to see in the hall with the long coat and the bangle and the heavy bag on his shoulder, Saint Claiborne.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to Saint. I fly back to New York and I started working on this film, Chicago Blues. And I would sit in this room with Saint every day for 8 to 9 hours a day. And he would talk about why it was important as a Black filmmaker to tell our stories. Because if we don't tell our stories properly, who will? And I tell you, man, it was sort of like I got re-indoctrinated in understanding my Blackness, you know, my connection to my identity. And from that point on, I said, well, if I'm going to be in this business, I'm a Black film editor, I'm a Black director, and if I'm working on films about our people, it's important that I'm telling our stories. And it really has a lot to do with Saint, really recalibrating my mindset. From that point on, man, I was like, you know, it was important to me to do stories about our people. And then I was fortunate to work with George again on some films. And then by 87, Henry Hampton, you know, pioneered this executive produced Eyes on the Prize. He was doing part 2 of Eyes on the Prize. And I was working on a children's show, 321 Contact, and my assistant editor had worked on Eyes on the Prize 1. And she told me Henry was looking for a producer. And I called him up, and lo and behold, he invited me to come to Boston, offered me a job as a producer, director, editor on 2 shows on Eyes on the Prize 2. And that started my producing, directing career.
That's amazing.
Yeah. A long haul, man. I'd been in the business already, by that time, 14 years.
I think it's really inspiring for a lot of people to hear, because like, I think we always think that, especially in our current society, that you're going to get into an industry and like, you're going to have your dream position right away. But it's not, you know, it's like, it's going, you got to put the work in and the years in for that.
Don't work that way, man.
Yo.
Don't work that way. So a lot of sweat and tears, brother. A lot of sweat and tears.
I believe it. I've read in interviews how you mentioned the influence of the Black Power mixtape and the French New Wave movement early on in your life. How did that influence your approach to structuring the film, which is like, it almost has like a stream of conscious feel to it in a way?
Well, that's interesting. I haven't heard that term. But you know, I had seen Black Power mixtape in around 2011. And the thing that struck me about that film was the way it was unfolding. You had all this fantastic archival footage from the 70s of the Black Power movement, the Panthers, Angela Davis, Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, Eldridge Cleaver, Kathleen Cleaver.
Yeah. And
the filmmaker didn't put anybody on camera. All the commentary was voiceover. And I remember thinking, man, that's bold. That's really bold. So when Ben and I started talking about how should we aesthetically execute this film, I said to Ben, man, there should be nobody on camera. We should do it all voiceover like that Black Power mixtape. But you know what had happened since that time? I mean, more and more doc filmmakers are doing films where you don't see anybody on camera. I had worked on a 4-part series in 2015 for Alex Gibney, who's a director, about Sinatra. And we had access to all these audio tapes of Sinatra's talking about his life. And we decided we would not show anybody on film unless it was in archival footage. And when we did any additional interviews, we just did them as audio. So I thought this was a great way to tell this story. I wanted people to be really immersed in the archival footage of the 60s, of the March on Washington, on the Montgomery bus boycott, on Dr. King in Birmingham, on the footage, the training movies about the FBI, the old movie clips we used that extol the virtues of the FBI. So that was the challenge. That was what the way we thought we were going to do it.
Do you think your background in editing has influenced your approach to filmmaking as opposed to someone who may have only worked in one aspect of filmmaking?
I would say absolutely yes, but what it also too is, it's not only a background in film editing that's informed my approach to filmmaking, but it's also my background as a young man growing up in East Harlem, listening to all kinds of music, falling in love with jazz musicians, loving Latin music, growing up with Latin music, watching old movies. It was working with St. Clair Bourne and George Bowers. St. taught me how to really think about using my own identity and telling our stories. George taught me how I should be professional. It was working with Henry Hampton, learning how to shape the 3-act structure. It was working with Spike and watching how the guy, which is bold and gutsy with his conceptual ideas. And, sometimes I'll try things now that, I was a little reticent about trying 20 years ago, because I figured, shit, man, Spike could do it. I could take a page from that.
Yeah.
And if you watch it, if you see some of I have another film coming out in February about Black visual artists. And I tried some things in there that I thought, okay, I'm thinking a little outside the box, just a little.
I'm excited to see that.
Yeah.
It's interesting too that you said like how you mentioned like jazz and music in yours, because I feel like your editing is very rhythmic, and like I can definitely like feel like the energy of jazz in it, just like the
oh yeah, you feel it all the time in my stuff, man.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that even on MLK FBI, we had a jazz musician who's the composer, Gerald Clayton.
Yeah, I love the score. It was
Gerald Clayton is the composer, man. He's got great chops, great musical chops, and great musical imagination. And I've tried to work with composers who bring to the table, a real large musical palette. I've worked with another composer, Catherine Bostic, who also is a pianist, and singer. And she has a beautiful palette, and we sort of mesh just like that.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a composer that really on your wavelength, you don't have to say a whole lot, and she gets what you're trying to do. And when you're talking about tone and texture, and instrumentality, it's a the thing that's wonderful about filmmaking, Jamil, is it's a fantastic collaborative process. When you find the right collaborators and the mix works really well, it's like a souffle, man. It rises. Sometimes though, if you doesn't find the wrong collaborators, it can fall flat.
I think we often we can downplay the role that the film industry has played in shaping our cultural values and informing like the hegemonic narratives that shape our society. Because humanity, we have always told stories about ourselves to understand ourselves, and this film kind of explores this idea in an interesting way, because you juxtapose like archival footage right next to classical like Hollywood films. Could you speak more to that creative decision?
Yeah, one of the things I said early on in the editing process to Laura, the editor, was that I'm going to bring a list in of a list of Hollywood films that's really about the FBI and speaking to what the FBI was all about. So I went to, into my head, I'm a real film buff. So I found I Walk a Crooked Mile. I was a communist for the FBI. Big Jim McClain with John Wayne, battling the communists.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI Story with James Stewart. And then there was a seminal show on ABC that I grew up with called The FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist. And, all of those shows basically were there to reinforce the mythology of the FBI. And in reality, there's still a lot of those shows on TV that does the same thing.
Yep.
Just the technology is different now, but it's ratcheting up how important the FBI is, CSI.
Instead of communism, it's terrorism.
Terrorism now, terrorism. So, but, as I've grown as a filmmaker and as a human being, I became much more suspect at what these shows are doing, creating and shaping propaganda.
Yep.
Propaganda. And you have to be very mindful of how you're being manipulated, man. Manipulated, you know. And so that's one of the reasons I say let's put these films in there, because clips from those films, because it'll give you a sense of what the FBI was all about. You know, and the mythology of and J. Edgar Hoover was very shrewd in shaping the mythology of the FBI right from the beginning.
Yep.
You know, so you see that footage with him with these little boys saying, "Mr. Hoover, you know, I want to be an FBI agent." You know.
Yeah.
Shaping, and then that's still him with the machine gun, man, the Tommy gun. Like he really ever used a Tommy gun?
Yo.
Not really.
But yeah, it's so true. Like Hollywood is like a propaganda machine. Like I remember reading about
still is, man.
Yeah, like $1 billion of the U.S. government, they get like part of their budget goes to funding Hollywood films, and like that. Like I remember reading that and just being like blown away by that. But then you start looking back and you're like, it makes sense.
Propaganda machine, man. Propaganda. It still is. I was saying to somebody, have you seen that Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yep.
Yeah. So I was saying to somebody in this story the other day, there's that sequence when Brad Pitt supposedly fights Bruce Lee. Remember that sequence where he's fighting the Bruce Lee character? So the Bruce Lee character is sort of cocky and full of himself. Mm-hmm. He throws, you know, he overpowers Brad Pitt the first time. Then the second time, Brad Pitt overpowers him.
Yeah.
And then the director, the second unit director comes in and breaks it up. But if you're a viewer, you know, and Brad Pitt's the star of the movie, right, Jamil?
Mm-hmm.
You will walk away thinking what? Brad Pitt kicked Bruce Lee's ass.
Yup, exactly.
Now you know, and I know, in reality, Brad Pitt, whoever his character was, could not have kicked Bruce Lee's ass.
Yup.
You know, it's like, you remember that movie?
I feel like it was feeding into like the whole Chuck Norris beating Bruce Lee.
Yeah. And it's like, remember that movie when Tom Cruise went to Japan?
What was more? Give me a little bit more about the plot.
When he went to Japan, he was a soldier, and then he became a samurai.
Oh, Last Samurai, yeah.
Last Samurai. Again, man, the white guy comes to Japan. He becomes better than the Japanese.
Yo. So true, man.
Telling you, man, American movie industry, man.
Cowboy Indians.
Exactly.
They would have you thinking like the Native Americans were the villains. And
man,
this kind of ties into this. The film starts with footage of Ronald Reagan, which is really interesting to me, considering his career as an actor, currently with Trump being a former reality TV star. And was it your intention to kind of like highlight the theatrical nature of American politics in a way?
Yeah, that's why we picked that Ronald Reagan clip, man. I love that clip. The story we're about to tell you.
Yo. Have you seen the clips from the new Ronald Reagan documentary where he's like, I'm not a politician, I'm an actor?
No, who did it?
It's on HBO, I believe.
I gotta look for it. Yeah, because he was, you know, but in reality, you know, Jamil, he was a better actor as president than he was ever as an actor in movies.
100%.
Yeah.
I remember watching him as like in some old clip with James Dean, and I was just like, wow, you're a terrible actor.
Yeah, he was a better actor as a president.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
MLK's turn from being a like kind of tokenized by the liberal establishment to being a pariah is kind of like a forgotten part of our history. And like King was someone whose political perspective was always constantly changing. And I feel like a lot of people don't even know, like towards the end of his life, he even, I found out about this recently, how he renounced I Have a Dream speech and like called it naive and began, you know, working more closer with like radical people. Like,
where'd you read that at? I gotta read that. Where'd you read that?
I can send you a link, but it's I think he said it was a conversation he had with Stokely Carmichael.
And send this to me. I want to read this.
Yeah, there was a conversation they had, or a letter they wrote, where he said it was a bit naive, and he said, "Why integrate into?" He said, "I feel like I've misled my people by integrating into a burning house," and I thought that was just so interesting that he said that. And like we never hear about that aspect of his life, but I do feel like your film though still kind of touches on that part of his life. Like you can like even in the footage, you can kind of like see him like you really see like a man under pressure who's like really looking and evaluating his world view.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And it's like your film is like a good, like, what was your intention in highlighting that part of his life?
That was the point. That was the point, to show that as the years went by, there was a weariness that set in. I mean, the man had a lot on his shoulders. I mean, here he is, considered the leader of the civil rights movement, having to deal with, you know, the struggles that he would face with his associates in all these cities, both in the South and the North, having to listen to people on talk shows ask him silly, asinine questions about, aren't your people moving too fast? You know, having to deal with the national police force basically surveilling him 24/7, having to be told that he was called a notorious liar, the world's most notorious liar by J. Edgar Hoover. You know, on top of that, then being given the Nobel Peace Prize and how he's going to deal with that. And thinking that, you know, as he was getting older and more thoughtful, realizing that it wasn't just about civil rights, it was about human rights and economic rights, which led him to want to do the Poor People's Campaign, led him to want to renounce America being in Vietnam, knowing full well the impact that would have on his relationship with the Johnson administration. And then, you know, his own personal life sounded like it was pretty messy.
Yeah.
There's a lot to carry, man. There's a lot of water to carry every day.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was like interesting to see that, like, because especially from my perspective, growing up, we like Martin Luther King is he's kind of like just put on this like pedestal, but it was interesting to see his humanity, like how he at times just seems very uncomfortable, kind of like messing with his collar and kind of like fidgeting and stuff. It's like you see the true humanity in this person.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was saying to somebody, you know, when I was your age, when I was a young man, 14, in my household, Dr. King was like, you know, a god.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have 3 pictures in our house, man. Dr. King, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and Jesus Christ. In the 60s in black households, that was pretty normal. Yeah, that was pretty normal. That's how we thought about these 3 men, you know. You know, they were going to save us, you know. So, you know, it's but as I've gotten older and seen life in more complicated and layered ways, that's what was one of the rationales for me wanting to do this film, to dig into who Dr. King was. Look at him as a human being, not as this iconic deity that you can't say anything bad about. I mean, it's kind of amazing. I was watching some footage recently about Muhammad Ali was walking through the streets of Florida and everybody was surrounding him and applauding him and saying they loved him so much. And this is the guy who 15, 20 years before, when he refused to go into the service, he was considered a pariah, you know, stripped of his belt, you know, demonized by America, you know. And here he is 20 years later. He's the great Muhammad Ali. Man, America.
Oh, well, it was truly an honor to get to sit down and have this discussion with you. Before we go, as a hip hop head, I definitely have to ask about your work on Star Wars, and what was that like? Like, could you feel like the cultural significance of what you were working on, or was it?
No, I didn't at all, man. You know, it was funny. The director of that film, a gentleman named Tony Silver, and the producer, you know, Henry Chalfant, they came in with this footage because Henry had been a photographer, and he would go, you know, up into the Bronx and the Queens, and he would take photographs of all these hip hop artists doing graffiti. And he really fell in love with these guys, and they really trusted Henry. So he brought Tony, and Tony said, actually, we should make a film. So they're making this film, they're shooting the footage, and they bring it to us. Victor, I was still working for Victor at the time, Victor, you know, so they bring the footage to us. And then Victor and I are looking at this footage and we're trying to make heads and tails of it. And we start putting it together. And we didn't know then, man, it would be such a seminal film. Mm-hmm. We worked 1 year just editing that film. Re-editing for 1 year. For 1 year, man. I was really, and Tony was a very difficult director in my opinion. He was a nice man, but sometimes he was extremely difficult. And he never could make a decision about what he liked and didn't like, and he just kept recutting and recutting. And I got so fed up by the end of that film, man, I wanted to strangle this guy. You know? but obviously it turned out to be one of these seminal films that even, you know, I teach at NYU, and I would have students in the last 10 years come to, you know, for advisement. one of the first things he asked me, he said, did you edit Star Wars? You know, because it was about hip hop and graffiti, you know, break dancing. Yeah, so, you know, I'm proud of that film. It took a lot of work, but I'm proud of it.
That's amazing, man. I love hearing those stories like that.
Cool.
But I really appreciate sitting down with you. I said that before, but I gotta say it again because it's truly an honor sitting down.
So do you make films? Do you make films?
Oh yeah, I make films. I'm a screenwriter, but also I've been trying to like craft my first film for a while now. But I have
keep at it, man. Keep at it.
Thank you, man.
Be tenacious. Be tenacious. Don't give up.
I appreciate that. Thank you for attending the first day of virtual programming at the AAACC in honor of Dr. King. Please join us tomorrow, where our segments will include a gardening segment from Divine Root, speech recitation from Brandon Hughes, an interview with J.R. Valerie concerning writing political prisoners as an act of solidarity, with musical performances from Elements and also Mike and D's choir. Look forward to seeing you.
That ain't right. There was a man, voice of a people, standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Shots rang out. Yes, it was a gun. He was the only one to fall down, y'all. That ain't right. Then his people scream, ain't no need for sunlight, ain't no need for moonlight, ain't no need for street light, just burning real bright. Some folks say we gon' fight, cause this here thing just ain't right. 1960 what? 1960 who? 1960 what? 1960 who? 19. Hey, the Motor City is burning, y'all. Ooh, the Motor City is burning, y'all. Great God Almighty, the Motor City is burning. Ooh, it's burning. This ain't living, no, 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 no. Rocket and moonshot, spending all the have-not money you make it. Before you see it, you take it. Oh, makes you wanna holler where you do my life. Makes you wanna holler where you do my life. This ain't living, this ain't living. This ain't living, this ain't living.
black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violence is when someone goes to molest this woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our women. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women. We respect them, but we want them to respect us. We think that the law should respect the Negro community. The law should protect the Negro community. The law should approach the Negro community with intelligence if it expects the Negro community to react intelligently.
Yeah, this is America. Guns in my area. I got the strap. I gotta carry 'em. Yeah, I'ma go into this. Yeah, this is gorilla. Yeah, I'ma go get the bag. Yeah, or I'ma get the pad. Yeah, I'm so cold like yeah. I'm so low like yeah. We gon' blow like yeah. This is America. Don't catch you slipping now. Don't catch you slipping now. Look what I'm whipping now. Look how I'm geeking now. I'm so pretty. I'm on Gucci. I'm so pretty. I'm gonna get it. This is Sully. On my Kodak. Ooh, know that. I got the plug on with a hawker. Whoa, they gonna find you like Paco. America, I just checked my phone, listen. You motherfuckers owe me.
cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palms of my hands, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman. That's my mother and all your mothers, and my grandmothers, and your grandmothers, and my great-grandmothers, and your greats, and my great-greats, and your, and all you women. And ding, 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 ding,
Expressions of freedom from the descendants of slaves. God gives us the strength for new horizons we must brave. First bondage, then mental, now financially oppressed. With this beat we dance, we know we passed the test. So as you struggle to catch the rhythm with your feet, ask yourself, can you dance to my beat? Our beat, our words, our melodies are gifts from the givers of those gifts. We're merely the terminals through which they have passed. So as you struggle to catch the rhythm with your feet, ask yourself, can you really dance to my beat?
strike you down. Tell me why. When you see the light. Let me tell you, if you're not wrong, then why? Everything is alright. So we gonna walk, alright, through the roads of creation. We the generation, tell me why. Try through great tribulation. Try through great tribulation. Exodus, alright. Movement of your people. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Alright. Exodus. Movement of your people. Oh yeah.
Any leadership that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave. They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we have decided to find a leadership of our own to make ourselves free men.
Open your eyes and look within. Are you satisfied with the life you're living? We know where we're going. We know where we're from. Believing Babylon. We're going to our fatherland. For Exodus. Movement of your people. Oh yeah. Send us another brother Moses of the people. Gonna cross the Red Sea. Movement of the people. Send us another brother Moses of the people. Gonna cross the Red Sea.
Some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution, staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities. Knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friend, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right
wherever they are, have the right to self-determination. I believe that the priorities of this planet have to be completely changed.
we'll all be free. Hey, just wait and see. Someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free. Hey, just wait and see. Someday we'll all be free. Yeah. Take it from me, someday we'll all be free.
I think what you're trying to ask is why I so insist upon giving out to them that blackness, that black power, that black pushing them to identify with black culture. I think that's what you're asking. I have no choice over it. In the first place, to me, we are the most beautiful creatures in the whole world. Black people. I mean that in every sense, outside and inside. And to me, we have a culture that is surpassed by no other civilization. We don't know anything about it. So again, I think I said this before in the same interview. I think at some time before, my job is to somehow make them curious enough or persuade them by hook or crook to get more aware of themselves and where they came from and what they are into and what is already there, and just to bring it out. This is what compels me to compel.